What's up? It's David, the Emotional Optimization Coach and founder of the Emotional Optimization Academy. Today, we're going to be talking about accelerating peak leadership performance, becoming an emotionally intelligent leader. So, accelerating peak leadership performance and becoming an emotionally intelligent leader. I'm going to be breaking down a couple challenges, a couple roadblocks, a couple things that get in the way of that peak performance, as well as some solutions on how we can get past those things and some insights to kind of make this journey, this leadership journey and being optimized easy for you. Okay, so that's my goal today. We're going to talk about peak performance. We're going to talk about what emotional intelligence is, and we're going to break it all down and bring you some skills and tools to be a better leader. Topics we're going to be covering today are the current leadership landscape, what are challenges and performance blockers for being a good leader. Then we're going to talk about emotional intelligence in leadership and why intelligence alone is not enough. Then we're going to get into accelerating peak performance, moving beyond intelligence to emotional efficiency. Then we're going to talk about the secret to peak performance, how to accelerate and optimize emotional efficiency. And then we're going to talk about some next steps for peak performance and emotionally optimized leadership. So let's talk about the current leadership landscape. What kind of challenges do leaders face and what blocks peak performance? So some of the challenges are time, right? We don't have enough time. We've got so many things, high stress environments, high demand environments where you've got a lot on your plate. Right? And you've got a lot of people looking up to you, whether that's in your own team, whether that's teams that you manage, whether that's managers that you manage, whether that's companies, whether you are an entrepreneur. It doesn't matter how big the thing is. The commonality is that you've got a lot on your plate. And you've got a lot of things to do, a lot of irons in the fire, a lot of moving pieces and parts throughout your dynamic, whether it's you by yourself and you're an influencer, right? You're influencing other people, you're leading other people by sharing, by being a thought leader, by doing all of those things where you have this knowledge, this expertise in your arena, or whether you are running big companies, whether you're running small companies, whether you're managing people, whether you're an executive, it doesn't matter. The commonalities are the same. A lot on your plate, high stress, high demand, sometimes high anxiety. You've got a lot going on inside of your head, and it takes a special kind of person to be in the position that you're in, right? So along with that, what do we look for, right? We want peak performance. We want to perform our best. We want to get the most out of every hour, out of every moment, out of every minute, and provide the kind of leadership that makes our jobs easier, okay? So some of the challenges are time, stress, overwhelm, burnout, okay? These are just a few of the many challenges that leaders face in whatever arena you're in. The blocks to your peak performance. So let's first talk about what peak performance means. Peak performance means operating at your optimal, operating at your most efficient, okay? But in order to get there, you've got to look at what is holding you back from being more efficient. So some of the blocks to peak performance, and let's also talk about some other challenges like imposter syndrome, not feeling like you're good enough, feeling like you don't have the skills necessarily, decision making, that would be another challenge. So those are things that you're looking for to work on, right? To improve, because even just a nominal improvement, a small improvement in any of these areas is going to give you more resources for you to place in other areas to be more efficient. If you're very efficient in one area and you're lacking efficiency in another, you can take the resources from that area that you have optimized and you could apply them to this other area that needs more optimization. right? That needs to be fine-tuned, that needs to be ultimately more efficient, right? So what blocks peak performance? Peak performance is operating at your best, being most efficient in all of the ways and the areas that you can be, and to show up to be your best, right? The blocks to that peak performance are a lot of, let's talk about overwhelm, imposter syndrome, stress and anxiety, or stress and overwhelm, right? Those are blocks to peak performance. You can't be operating your best if you're worried about how people see you, or you're worried about you're not good enough, or you're worried about you don't have the skills or the expertise in a particular area, or you don't have enough certificates, you don't have enough training, you don't have enough education, you don't have enough this, you don't have enough that. Those are draining your resources. And the resources that I'm talking about specifically, being an emotional optimization coach, I'm talking about emotional resources. I'm talking about mental and emotional resources, the resources that allow you the ability to be at your peak, to perform at your best. And let's be honest, leadership is similar to being an Olympic athlete. You train constantly, you're constantly improving, you're constantly doing a lot of self-development, a lot of personal growth, personal development, because you are your greatest asset. Okay. And if you are operating at your lowest, then you cannot do all of the things that are on your plate. And trying to do all of these things when you are wasting your resources on some of these unresolved emotional issues, or protecting yourself on some subconscious level from unresolved emotional issues, then you're wasting resources. So the blocks of those peak performance elements are, let's see, stress and overwhelm are wasting resources on unresolved emotions. So if you can reclaim those resources, those mental and emotional resources, and find ways to reduce or eliminate your stress or your overwhelm, then you can operate more efficiently in a high stress environment, in a high demand environment, because you're not wasting these resources. Okay, so as you reclaim these resources and fill your cup to the brim, to overflowing, where you have plenty of energy, plenty of resources, and you love what you do, then you can put in the hours that are required for you to put in and be the leader that you are more efficiently. Okay, so you can get more done, you can create a bigger impact, you can lead more people, you can help those people to be more efficient as well. The people that you are leading, you can help them to be more efficient as you become more efficient, which means optimized, which means operating at your peak performance. So leadership landscape, we're talking about challenges, imposter syndrome, overwhelm, stress, anxiety. Let's see, what else? Time management. Time management is another big one. Procrastination. Those are just a few, and all of those have some level of emotional optimization that you can reclaim resources from. Because if you're not worried about what other people think, if you're not triggered, if you're not stressed, if you're not overwhelmed, and these things are coming at you, and you've got a mile-high long to-do list, and you're like, okay, I'm not reactive, I can respond to these things and make decisions more clearly, okay, because decision-making is another one of those. Make decisions more clearly, more confidently, step into those decisions, take action, step into those decisions, have my team take action, right? And optimizing your team by optimizing yourself, because the leadership in any group, in any structure, any community structure, is what leads the ship. That's why it's called leadership. Okay. You are leading the ship. You are the one who is basically setting the tone or setting the stage for everybody else. If you've got leadership that is looking inside, taking personal responsibility, improving themselves, developing themselves, constantly, like an Olympic athlete, training, improving, applying, training, improving, applying, training, improving, applying, all of these things for yourself, then what are your people going to want to do? They're going to go, oh, okay, the alpha, the lead is doing all of these things. I want to do these things. I want to be the lead eventually. I want to be a leader. So I'm going to do more of those things. So you're leading by example. You're setting the stage. And just by doing more of your own internal work, okay, mental, emotional work, optimizing those things and being less reactive and more responsive, more decisive, more confident, all of these things help you to be a better leader and help your team to be more efficient, help your business to be more efficient, help your empire to be more efficient, your whatever dynamic or structure that you are working within is going to be more efficient as you are more efficient. Okay, so that is a little bit on the current leadership landscape, some challenges that leaders face and what blocks peak performance. Let's talk about emotional intelligence in leadership. And this is probably a hot topic and you've probably heard about it before. I'm here to tell you why intelligence itself is not enough. So emotional intelligence is being aware of and knowing how your emotions are working, right? Being intelligent emotionally. Your emotions, the emotions of other people around you, emotional intelligence, having smarts when it comes to your emotions, realizing that emotions affect what you do. As a human being, as a machine, because let's be honest, it kind of takes a machine type person to be a leader, especially in the type of leadership that you're in. Whatever it is, I don't know, but I can tell you there's some machinery going on. There's some internal system going on that makes you the kind of a person that is a leader, okay, in a leadership role. So emotional intelligence is the ability to realize and recognize the effect that your emotions have on your performance. Okay, we're talking specifically about in regards to leadership, emotional intelligence in regards to leadership. Just being aware of your emotions or the emotions of other people or how emotions affect performance, that's not enough because you have to do something about it. If you just know about something, you could be book smart all day and not be world smart, not be street smart, not know how to apply what you know. So you could talk crap all day about your emotions or other people's emotions, but if you're not doing anything with it, it's inefficient, it's ineffective, it's pointless, it's worthless to just have the intelligence. If you don't have the application and you are not optimizing your emotions, then you're just a smarty pants that doesn't know how to do something or how to apply something. So emotional intelligence is not going to be enough when you want to optimize, when you are looking at peak performance, when you are looking at leadership, okay? Because again, let's be honest, leaders are Olympic athlete level people because it takes a lot to do what you're doing. I recognize that, okay? So I'm here to say, I see you, I honor you, I recognize you. Taking on that mantle of leadership is something fantastic. There's a lot of weight there, there's a lot of pressure there, it's a high stress, high demand environment, but you got this, you can do this. And you can do it even better as you learn to optimize your emotions so that you are more responsive, less reactive, so that you can get more done in less time and be an example to your team. Be an example to the people around you, whether that's your team, whether that's your peers, whether that's upper leadership, upper management, it doesn't matter who it is. Whomever you are around is going to benefit from the work that you do for yourself and the ripple effect that has on your organization, on your peers, on your the people that you lead, your teams, right? Imagine the kind of effect that that has when you got somebody doing their own work, improving themselves every day, showing up and being a better person every day. Imagine what that does to your performance. And as a ripple effect, as a butterfly effect, what does that do to the performance of your team, to the performance of your entire organization? Realize how pivotal your personal growth is, your personal development is. The more efficient you become, the more efficient that ripples out into the world, the more that efficiency ripples out into the world. Okay, so that's a little bit on emotional intelligence in leadership and why intelligence itself is not enough. You've got to optimize. You've got to, if you want peak performance, if you want to be better, if you want to do more with less effort and create a bigger impact in the world, then optimize. And we're going to talk here in a moment about what optimization actually is. So let's talk about accelerating peak performance, moving beyond intelligence to emotional efficiency with something that I call emotional optimization. Okay, this is something that I created. This is something that I came up with to encapsulate the work that I do. So the work that I do is around optimizing your emotional responses, optimizing your emotions. Okay, and let's first talk about emotions and feelings. Okay, just a side note, emotions and feelings. So emotions are the visceral physical response that you have to stimuli. Okay, something happens in the world and you feel something. That is the emotion. That is the initial response, the initial visceral response, the initial response in your body, in your mind. Okay, the feelings are all of the, and this is getting a little deep in the weeds, but all of the past experiences that you have around that response. Okay, so if you hear a loud noise and you jump, that is, well, first, that is one of the deeply ingrained things that we have. It's one of the very few things that we are brought into, fears that we are brought into, is the fear of loud noises and the fear of falling. Okay, so when you see a baby startled, that's an inbred response. That's a born response. It's a organic response. And falling, so same thing. So both of those are responses that we have. And then we have all of our past experiences, all of our memories, all of our associations around the thing, around whatever the stimulus is, and whatever that feeling is, that first emotion is, the reaction that we have, and the past experiences create the response that we have, or the reaction that we have. And let's talk a little bit about reaction versus response. So reaction is when you've got that stimulus, that thing that happens, and you find yourself reacting before you can reason, before you're rationally responding. Okay, that would be an example of a trigger response. Okay, or trigger reaction. So when you are triggered, when you've got something, say you're in a high stress environment, you've got a lot on your plate, you got a deadline coming up, right? And somebody in your team is not doing what they're supposed to be doing. They have not completed the task that they were assigned to complete, and now it's on you. Okay, you're the leader, you're the person responsible. You're like, man, if Joe had just done his job, I wouldn't be in this position. Well, what you are experiencing in that situation, let's call it an emotional reaction. You are reacting to the situation because you are stressed already. So you're already tense, right? You're already in this high pressure environment, high stress environment. You're like, man, if I don't do this, we're going to lose this client, blah, blah, blah. So you got to step in and you got to work those 20 hours and you got to get this thing done because it's got to be shipped out tomorrow. And you've got to make sure that you're getting things done. And you wouldn't be in that position if Joe had just done his job, right? Well, that's a reaction. So if you're in this reaction, what you are doing is you have to fight through the emotions that are coming up and the resources that are being applied to that reactive emotion. And maybe that goes back to somebody else let you down earlier, maybe in childhood. Who knows? You were expecting something from somebody, they never came through, and you felt disappointed. Now it's on you, and you've got to do this thing, and you really didn't want to because it was somebody else's responsibility and they didn't do it, and all of this. So you go back from this situation here, the trigger, the initial thing that triggers you, right? The trigger event. And you realize it's not about this particular event. It goes back to all of your memories and associations around whatever the trigger was. It's a button that got pushed, right? So whatever button that is, you can either continue cycling through, reacting to the button, working through it, reacting to the button, work through it, and just kind of like spinning in circles around this button. You're like, well, every time this happens, I throw off my game and I'm not efficient and I can't do what I need to do, and you crumble, right? That's not a good leader. But if you take the button, you're like, okay, what am I reacting to? How am I feeling? Where does this go back to? And you look back to the root, you get closer to the root, you process through it. And I've got a 5-minute exercise I'll show you in just a moment. But if you give yourself the freedom to go through for 5 minutes and just travel back to whatever the thing is that you're actually reacting to, because you're not reacting to Joe, you're reacting to something from your past that may not seem like it's related. But that's what your mind is reacting to. That is what your mind is trying to protect you from, the pain of this past thing repeating. So if you go back to the thing, you vent and release the emotion, you experience the emotion, you vent, release it, and then you rewire it and restructure it inside of your brain. What you're doing is, instead of that button being active, you are deactivating the button. Instead of somebody pushing your buttons or pushing your triggers, you're working on them. And every time that you work on them, you're reclaiming more of your resources. You're spending less of those resources trying to protect yourself from past pains repeating or the potential of future pains happening again. And you're reclaiming those resources so that you can be more present in the moment and more responsive instead of reactive. If you were in a state where you didn't have a reaction to something happening, you could still be in a high stress environment and not experience the stress, at least not the same way that everybody else does. So Joe doesn't perform, doesn't do his thing. You're like, okay, you are more clear-headed because you're not in a reactionary state. Because what happens when we're in a reactionary state is that our higher brain functions cut off and we are worried about survival. That's what stress is. It's survival. Okay. So high stress environments, we're worried about survival. We got everything on the line, blah, blah, blah. That causes a reaction inside of your body that's life or death. Right. So it's a visceral response inside of your body that you're stressed and you're tense. And that comes from some level of fear deep in your subconscious mind. Okay. Whether you're aware of it or not, it comes from some level of fear. So if you realize that you are safe, if you realize that this is not a life-threatening situation, then your body is not going to give you that reaction and you can more clearly respond. So when you are not in fight or flight state and you are more responsive, it's easier for you to actually assess the situation. It is easier for you to maybe delegate to, okay, if Joe's not going to do this, or if Joe's not stepping up, who's the backup? Who's the person that I can task this with? And have them do it, because Sally's going to show up. Sally always does her work. Sally performs. Sally overperforms. That's the kind of person I want. So, okay, Joe didn't do it. Sally, you're up. Let's go. This is what I need. Can you do this? Boom. It's done in 10 hours. You don't have to waste your 20 hours trying to make it happen because you got to pick up where Joe left off. And then you have a conversation with Joe and you're like, hey, Joe, why'd you drop the ball? Right? But you're doing it from a clear, responsive state, a state and position of mental and emotional power, not from reactivity. Okay. So if you're not reacting, it's a lot easier for you to be present, which allows you to communicate more effectively the things, even the hard conversations that you're going to have. It allows you to communicate more effectively, to be more present, to not be reactive and attack Joe because he failed. And you can have a more honest human conversation with Joe, which might turn him into a peak performer. Okay? If somebody feels like they are safe, they are going to perform better. If you feel like you are safe, you are going to lead better. Okay? So those are just some examples of how you can accelerate peak performance by getting beyond emotional intelligence, moving into emotional efficiency, and using emotional optimization as a way to stop reacting to the world around you, to your leadership role and all of the things that you have to do, and start responding as you continue evolving, developing, reclaiming your resources, working on your buttons, working on your triggers. And it only takes 5 minutes at a time. Okay. This is a little thing that I give to my clients, and it is so massively effective because there is a compound effect to this. So the 5-minute emotional release is something that I came up with as well after working with tens of thousands of clients, tens of thousands of client hours, thousands of clients across the world, solving life's greatest challenges. I've come up with this 5-minute emotional release. The process is basically you have some kind of an emotion, you're feeling some kind of way. And a lot of times we try to pull ourselves out of it. We try to use coping mechanisms or management techniques, emotional management techniques, stress management techniques, and we try to pull ourselves out. But if you give yourself 5 minutes, and you can excuse yourself to the bathroom, to some private place, your office, whatever, and you can give yourself the freedom to go into that reaction, into that feeling for 5 minutes. Okay. And it's going to suck. It's going to be difficult. It's not going to be easy. You're not going to want to do it because your mind wants to protect you from the pain. But if you give yourself 5 minutes and you allow yourself the freedom to go into the feeling, to magnify and amplify that feeling for 5 minutes, I guarantee you're going to feel better, and it's going to compound over time. Okay. Because what you're doing is you're acknowledging the feeling. And this is the other part of that is acknowledge, validate, explore, the avenue of release. Acknowledge that you're feeling something. Validate it. It's okay for you to feel the feeling. It's okay for you to be feeling something. Maybe you're scared. Maybe you're sad. Maybe you're angry. Whatever the feeling is, it doesn't matter. Acknowledge it. I'm feeling angry. Validate it. It's okay for me to feel angry. And then explore it. And with this, what I do is I set the intention for my mind to show me the root. Show me what I'm actually reacting to. Show me what I'm getting angry at. Show me where this comes from. And then explore it. That's where you dive into it. You go, I'm feeling angry. I don't know why I'm feeling angry, right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm feeling angry. It's okay to feel angry. Anger is a valid emotion, and I deserve to feel it when I need to. Anger, sadness, whatever the emotion is, it doesn't matter. And then go into it, set the intention. All right, show me where this comes from. Show me what I'm actually reacting to, where this feeling comes from, what is unresolved, and then go into it. Okay. You set the intention and then you let go and you go into it. So I'm feeling angry. And if you want to imagine the emotion like a color, this is another quick mind hack to get around the mental process sometimes, is imagine that feeling like a color, like anger's red. Okay, so imagine just magnifying that red, make that red as big as possible. Magnified, amplified, intensified for 5 minutes, and it's going to cycle you through. You're going to have memories and emotions and thoughts coming up. Okay. And just let it go through. Let it go through. Let your mind feel whatever it needs to feel. Go through what it needs to go through. What you're doing is you're trying to get to the bottom of the emotion. Because what happens is giving yourself that 5 minutes, what you're doing is you're resetting that emotional switch. You're resetting that emotional reaction. So going into it, magnifying, amplifying, feeling it for 5 minutes. And then you're like, oh, this reminds me of my dad when I was 5 years old, and he just laid into me and made me feel some kind of way. And I was so angry because I wasn't being heard, right? That's an example of an emotion that has a root that you have allowed yourself the freedom within 5 minutes to get to. And then at the end of that, when you get to whatever the thing is, feel the feeling. right? Blow up on your dad at 5 years old and just express yourself, give yourself the storyline in your head of what you thought was missing. Allow yourself the freedom to stand up, to speak out, to do whatever you couldn't do back then. And then rewrite the story in your mind to be better. So become your own father, become your own mother, become the thing that you needed, the thing that you wanted back then. And imagine supporting yourself. Imagine giving yourself a really big hug and being like, you know what? We got this. I got you. You're safe, whatever you need. Because what does that do? That helps you feel safe. That helps you feel whatever was missing, so that now when you're talking to Joe, you're like, hey, you know what, Joe? Thank you for how you showed up, because it allowed me to go deeper into my process, my thing, whatever. But we have to have a conversation. And you're more present, okay? You're not attacking Joe. You're having an honest human-to-human conversation. If you could imagine that 5 minutes that you just had with this imaginary dad inside of your head that you just spoke up to, reclaimed the mental and emotional resources that you were wasting on this thing that you didn't even know you were wasting, and reclaim that and became a better father to yourself, so you could allow yourself the freedom to feel like you're strong enough to stand up for yourself, and you're strong enough to listen and to be heard. What are you going to do with Joe? You're going to give him the same freedom, the same allowance, the same safety of feeling like he's safe enough. Hey, you know what? I've been having a day at home, having a week at home. You know, my wife's going through something and I couldn't show up this week. Okay, I appreciate that. Next time, if you're going through something, please come to me. Let me know ahead of time so that we can work around that. If I need Sally to do something, that's okay. It's okay to share the workload. What I don't want you to do, Joe, is I don't want you to feel like this is all on you and you have to take it all on. We are a team. Let's be a team. Okay, so that's a storyline. That's an example of application of you doing your own work and how it can affect your leadership. Okay, moving beyond emotional intelligence to emotional efficiency, because what's going to happen now that you have reclaimed this one piece, this one memory, this one emotion, that button is no longer going to work. You're not going to feel like you are as reactive as you were before, and you're going to allow yourself the freedom to start responding to things. Over time, what happens is you reclaim these resources, and that's just one seemingly small thing that has spidered its way into all kinds of reactions in your life. So if you work on the one root issue, 5 minutes going into it, the very minimum that you're going to do is you're going to start to peel off the layers and get closer to the root. If you don't get to the root, that's okay. What you've done is you have vented some of the emotion. So the next time somebody pushes that button or something happens and that button gets pushed or you get triggered, it's going to be less emotionally reactive. And you're going to start climbing out of that emotional hole and stress and anxiety and overwhelm and all of these things that we're talking about, right? All of those challenges that I mentioned earlier, and you're going to start reclaiming those resources. Over time, you're going to improve your performance. You're going to be a better leader. You're going to improve your leadership performance. You're going to be optimized as a leader. Let's talk about the secret to peak performance, how to accelerate and optimize your emotional efficiency. What I'm going to be talking about is something that I call the Emotional Optimization Accelerator Program. And that is one of the things that I use with some of my high performers, some of my leaders, where we go in every week, right? Or every session, every time that we work together, it's a one-on-one, we dive deep, whatever their issues are, they come to the surface, we work through them. We start with having a conversation. So we get on Zoom, have a conversation, and then something comes to the surface. They don't have to know what they want to work on. They just know that just by showing up and putting in the work with somebody who can guide them through their own thing, something comes up and we zone in on whatever that thing is. So they're like, well, mostly it's been a great week, but I had this one thing, this person said something to me and had me feeling some kind of way. I can't seem to figure it out. I just blew it off and I start zoning in on that one thing because I'm like, okay, if we can work on that one thing and go through a little exploration into the subconscious mind, or walk through a little storyline, or do a little exercise like I just did with that 5-minute exercise with the avenue of release, the 5-minute emotional release. Walking through those things and doing those, if you've got somebody who can guide you personally and coach you through those experiences, how much faster would that optimization be for you? And then imagine 3 months of that, having somebody work with you one-on-one to get to your peak performance faster, to accelerate your development, to accelerate your leadership, to accelerate you being the best person that you can possibly be, doing what you love to do. And if you don't know what that is, we find that out. Okay. So that is the secret to peak performance. And the Emotional Optimization Accelerator program is basically a way to work with me one-on-one. It's highly personalized, highly customized, highly tailored to whatever your needs are. And you don't have to know what's blocking you. You don't have to know what your challenges are. You don't have to know. I'm good at that. I'm good at getting into your mind and helping you to figure out whatever it is that you need. Like I said, I've worked with thousands of clients all over the world solving life's greatest challenges. Okay. That's my thing. I love getting into the brain. I love helping people, especially high performers, people in high stress environments, people with high pressure jobs. I love doing that because that is where I see the most impact, the most transformation. And I love working with leaders because they show up to work on themselves. They realize the impact of what it means to work on you. Because as you get better, your team gets better, your business gets better, your empire gets better, whatever it is that you touch, the people that you surround yourself, the people that are around you, all get better because you're working on yourself. Okay. So the Emotional Optimization Accelerator program, the opportunity to work with me one-on-one to help me get in your brain, figure out what it is that is blocking you, challenging you, what is getting in your way, what you need to focus on, the priorities that are going to move the needle for you the most, that are going to make the biggest impact in your personal development and your self-growth, that is going to have a massive impact on your bottom line. It's going to have an impact on the efficiency of you, the efficiency of your team, the efficiency of every single thing that you do, because you are the key component. You are the key piece of everything in your life. So the next steps for peak performance and emotionally optimized leadership, if you're interested in learning more, working with me, seeing how I can help you, seeing how I can benefit your business, benefit your leadership, then let's book a strategy call. Okay. In that strategy call, what I will do is I will dive in and I will look at your circumstance, your situation. Chances are, just in that strategy call, not only am I going to be able to tell you, yes, I can help you with this, this, or this, whatever it is that comes up, but I might even work with you on something immediately in that call because I am driven to help people. Okay. That has been my calling and my mission ever since I was a kid. I love to help people. Okay. So the byproduct of that, the hazard of the work that I do is that I might actually help you on the strategy call. So it's not just about me getting in and seeing if I can help you, but it's me most likely actually helping you. Okay. So if you want to book a free strategy call, reach out to me. There's information somewhere around this video. Do that. Let's connect. If you've got questions, let's connect, let's chat, let's do whatever. I want to help you. Let's see if we can make that happen. So those are the tips for today. I want to say thank you so much for hanging out with me, but most importantly for choosing to level up your life and your skills to take your life to a whole new level, to be a better leader, to be a better person, to learn more about emotional optimization so you can become more efficient with your emotions and get more done with less overwhelm, stress, and anxiety. Let's connect. I would love to help you feel better. Somewhere around this video, you're going to find the resources to connect with me. I look forward to that. Go out and be a better person. Create ripples forward in the world. Be better, do better. That's how you lead the world. That's all for now. I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me, watching this video, and I'll catch you in the next video.